morning, and welcome to another episode of The Spotlight. I'm your hostess, Gail Nicholson, miracle making queen with Creative Command Coaching and Consulting, and firebrand in the broadcasting area. I want to invite you to join me today to speak with Shakti Ki Maya, who is really, oh my gosh, how do I even want to describe her? She is a bundle of joy, literally, not like a baby, but like this walking cloud of happiness. She's laughing at me now, but you'll see. Let me introduce you to Miss Shakti Ki Maya, Chaos Whisperer at ShaktiAwakening.net. Thank you so much for joining me today, Shakti. How are you?
Happy.
Yay!
I like being a cloud of happiness. I like being a cloud of joy spreader. That's what I call my son. He's a spreader of joy. So
That's
I can
beautiful.
I can receive that.
Awesome. Awesome stuff. So thank you so much for joining me here today. We're going to talk about all kinds of stuff, but let's begin by having you define for us what exactly do you mean by a chaos whisperer? What is that?
Well, all things are created from a result of chaos. I mean, we've been living in it for the last year. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when people are experiencing chaos, they often forget they are creating. And a creation is the pulling together of all the elements that are seemingly disconnected and bringing those elements to the desired outcome. So I've kind of coined this name Chaos Whisper because I offer the clarity, I offer the support, I offer the guidance, and I offer the ease in attaining these outcomes by pulling all together the result of what you're creating. And creating crap is no different than creating greatness. And so people, just even that little nugget of, oh, so when things go bad, I'm still creating. And that's a really important piece that I bring to people because they don't realize that it's still working for you, possibly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it brings a whole new level of understanding to that old phrase we hear a lot. Worry is a misuse of the imagination,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whatever it is that we're visualizing is what's going to, bear out, given our willingness to receive it, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we don't tend to want to take responsibility for creating the muck, do we?
Well, it's interesting because I have quite a story of how much I learned from that reality, and that was how I bought my car, and it was through a lot of trauma drama with a car that did terrible in the snow, and so the next year I made sure that I would never do what happened again. And
Mm-hmm.
so it actually has a desired result. If you can ask the question in the moment, is this the energy that's required for what I'm creating?
Ooh, that's magical.
Because when I have when I have things going on and I get a rake smack in my face of like, oh my God, like what is that? I don't go to why is this happening to me, which is what I used to do growing up. I go to, is this what's required to create what I'm asking for? And it always seems to be a yes. And so I was just like, so then I allow it, I embrace it, I laugh at it. I mean, I might be crying a lot, and I'm also in the awareness that I asked for this, and this is part of its creation, because everything is being orchestrated, everything. And so when we can take the judgment of how it's being orchestrated out, then we can just show up and take the next step.
Nice. Nice. Um, Gosh, that is really kind of amazing stuff. Now, let me ask you this. How did you get into this pathway of doing this for people? Because I can definitely see where it's needed. I mean, even in my own life, I get overwhelmed with too many options. They're like, oh, check this app out. You can do this, and you can do this, and you can do this, and I'm like, no, right? Because
Hmm.
it's too much for me, the way that I do things, the way that I learn. So, how did you discover that you had a talent for helping people like me go, okay, focus,
Well, it,
wrangle in, and
right.
go forward?
Well, you know, it's a really interesting phenomena. People that are healers believe that they're here to heal the world as opposed to healing themselves. And so when we become a facilitator, we can help others heal through them discovering how to heal themselves. And so when I found, because I've always been a healer, but then I learned that it was me that I was healing. And I have a lot of powerful stories. I mean, a lot of powerful things. And when I realized it was really more about me proving and seeking my own evidence to what kind of healing I was asking for in this world. And I had a really intense experience where a bungee cord in the back of a truck slipped and it hit my hand and I broke my finger, I'm pretty sure. It was a mess and very bloody. And I was on my way to cook at a retreat for Rinpoche at a Buddhist retreat. And I was not in a position where I could take time to go to the hospital. I wasn't in the position to do anything but focus on what's next. But I had already gone into shock because my hand was a mess. And I wasn't driving, thank God. And I had $1,000 worth of food in the back of my truck. So I wasn't about to like stop this, and I still had an hour and a half drive. And so I remember Louise Hayes saying the power of now, or the potency or the power is right now. It's like right now. So I did a prayer. I focused on a mantra. And and I said the only thing I can do is to go to Safeway and get ice. So I got ice and I iced it for an hour and a half and I focused on the point of power is right now. And I just did a mantra the entire time. I could see it was my middle finger and I could see that I was in a pickle. And that night I went to sleep and I had a dream and the person I was cooking for came in a wheelchair and he put his hand on my stomach and said everything was going to be okay. And I said, oh, the lump behind your ear is gone. And he goes, yes, it is. And I woke up and my hand was fine. And so I knew that there is a powerful experience that I had of just healing my finger overnight. And I didn't know for years until my son was born and I had stuff go on with the IV and they had a subtissue hematoma thing and I had to have an x-ray and she said, it looks like you broke your finger at some point. And I said, yes, I believe I did. And so I knew that it had been broken and I had cooked the whole next day with it. And I knew that at one point it hit something and I felt the deep bruise within it for a couple of hours, but it didn't impact me. And so I learned a lot about healing and I learned about that moment where you have a choice and I think Wim Hof does it all the time where he has you bypass the mind and you live in a different calibration. And I've experienced several of these that it's taught me a path that we're not here for healing others, we're here for healing ourselves. And because of that, I have become an extraordinary facilitator for helping others with the clarity that's required.
That's awesome stuff. Absolutely amazing. I love that story, by the way. One of the workshops that I used to do in the past was about Huna breathing techniques. And Huna prayer. And for those of you who don't know, one of my favorite stories about the Huna are that the missionaries went and tried to convert them, and the Huna looked at the missionaries and started calling them howlies, meaning that their prayers have no breath, right? So
Right.
the Huna process is a process of breathing that energizes those prayers. And the Huna people, because they're growing up with this mentality and this knowledge of what to do and how to do it, they can instantly set broken bones
Right.
through prayer,
Yes.
right? And it sounds like you kind of tapped into that
I tapped into something.
Yeah, definitely.
I
Definitely.
tapped into something. And it's not a story I go around telling people because they look at me and they're like, I don't get it. And I'm like, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay that you don't get it.
Yeah.
What I understand is that everything is impermanent. Everything. Everything is an illusion. Everything can change in a heartbeat.
Yes, it can. That is so true, and we do tend to forget that, don't we? We do. Well, I want to say hello to everybody who's watching right now. We've got a few viewers across the different channels that we're on. So thank you for coming. Hi, Julie Delzell. Thanks so much for showing up today. I want to invite all of you, if you're watching this, if you're getting some benefit from this, please tag somebody else that you think might get a benefit as well, or share it out, or both. So thank you very much for your support of this show. All right, now let's get into the meat and potatoes of what we came to talk about today, Shakti. And that is playing big and winning big. Now, what does that mean? What are we looking at here?
Well, before we tap into that, I want to share a brief thing that has come into my life over the last bit, and that is the number 7. And the number 7 is a key number for me, which I never understood other than my life seems to happen in sevens. There's always been this pattern of 7, and and things really speed up when I get to the 7th year. And so when I did some numerology and astrology recently, she's like, oh, your birth date is a 7 and your birth name is a 7. And I was like, is that normal? She's like, no. And I said, so do things happen to people in sevens? No. I said, really? That's fascinating. So then I jokingly said to my son, I was like, well, what's my frequency? And he's like, oh, 777. I'm like, well, why would you say that? He goes, because the pure tone of Earth is 7. And I knew that. And I said, well, isn't that interesting? So I have 7 planets in Earth. And I have, it just gets better. And I actually started Miracles and More, which is my company name, in 2014, which
Nice.
comes out to a 7. And Miracles is a 7. And there's like all these, and it's just this constant awareness of 7. So I was like, I looked up, actually, when I had this astrology reading, she said, you're all about awakening. And I was like, you're damn straight I am. I was in my website, Shakti Awakening. And so I looked up the Hertz frequency for 777, and it said spiritual awakening. And I was like one of those, oh my God, are you fucking kidding me?
Yes.
And so I do these FMM sessions because they're an FM miracle session. I bring the synergy of a miracle because I am the vibration of that in the 7. And so this program that I'll be talking about and what it means to play big and win big, it derives from that, which is really powerful.
Now, before the show, didn't you mention something about the 777 feeding in with Earth Day? Because today is Earth Day.
Today
here
is
in the
Earth Day.
States.
So again, the pure tone of the Earth frequency is 7. And so it's just 7 is it's, in my opinion, it's apparently the holy number of my world. I don't know if other people have it, but Earth Day, I think there's the magic of the Earth. I mean, if you take the hidden gems, which are tucked inside and under, there's just so much. I want to say je ne sais quoi, but I don't speak French, and I don't know if that's right. But there's a mystic piece to the Earth. There's an essence to the Earth that is actually inherently joyful. Yeah. Inherent, and that's what people are locked out of. That inherent peace of that inherent joy. And so then you get in the busyness and the busyness and the busyness. And so today, what I'm going to be talking about, playing big, winning big, begins with understanding this essence. And so being locked out or being locked in these are the limitations that we're living in. We come from lack. So the old beliefs, the ancestral, we have this thing called imposter syndrome. We have anything that keeps us from our true magic of being our unique self. And anything that keeps us from expressing that uniqueness, it hides. Hides in the earth, it hides in our bodies, it hides outside of our bodies. We live in this fear, we avoid it, we blame it, we project it. And so there's like this extensive list of tools for self-suppression. So it's actually easier to tell you what playing big isn't, right?
Right.
Than it is to tell you all of the ways that to play big. It's
Well,
learning.
let's start there then. What is not playing big? Because this is going to be fun.
Well, it's when we come from lack. It's
Right.
when we come from fear. It's when we come from hiding and blaming and problems. You know, basically, it's unwilling to take a risk.
Nice. Okay.
It's an unwillingness. It's you know, there's a word that I love, and it's not derogatory, but it's called fundamental laziness. We're not hunters and we're not gatherers like we were eons ago. And so we come from this fundamental laziness of comfort. And then we come from, we have this awareness that playing small, and it's kind of like misery loves company.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, well, I'm not willing to do that thing. And so the other person's like, well, I'm not willing to do it if you're not willing to do it. And well, if you don't do it and I don't do it, then they're not going to do it. Then nobody's.
See it done.
So then it's this domino effect.
Yeah.
And so what's interesting is, you know, it takes so basically playing big is taking a risk. And you have to have awareness on how you are playing small so that you can do the opposite. and then you have to come from awareness and just keep doing the opposite. And so it's like if you're afraid of heights and you have a ladder that you have to like get a hornet's nest or something. And you know that you're going to get more pain by getting stung than going up that ladder. So again, it's what you're driven by. You know, there's pain or pleasure, and 80% of the people like being driven by pain, and 20% like being driven by pleasure. And so if you can kind of allow yourself to receive the pleasure to drive you, but usually you have to hit rock bottom. And the thing is, there is no such thing as bottom. Like there's always somebody that has it worse. There's always something else that can happen. So when you go into the why does this always happen to me? Or
Worst question to ever ask.
it is the worst question to ask ever. It is truly like stop yourself, have a rubber band around you and like play with it and like flick your wrist. So that hurts more than asking the question.
Yeah, that question is like having a trap door on your bottom. Really? You really want to know how? Don't ask how it could get worse. Don't ask why it's happening. There's no good answer to that question.
You know, I was test driving a car when I was getting my new car. And the guy was just looking at me with like his eyes popping out of his head. He's like, "Are you always this happy?" And I was like, "I am." He's like, I said, "Unless you're my kids."
There you go. There you go. That's funny. Awesome stuff. Well, it sounds like let me kind of like catch up with you here. It sounds like what you're saying is that 80% of people in this life are being run by that part of themselves that learned how to stay small to avoid pain, right?
And by doing so, they're creating pain.
Yeah, and they're
Yes.
just creating more of it. But inside of that comfort zone of this is the pain I know, this is the expected
Right.
pain, this is the pain that I know that I can survive. Whereas, you know, that space in us, that spark of possibility that goes, hey, wouldn't you like to try to do this?
Well,
you
that's
know?
the awareness. That's awareness. It's like when you have this little wisp,
Hmm.
huh? Like they're little dragonfly butterfly zingers that just whiz by, or hummingbird, and it's like you can catch it or you can ignore it or you don't even see it.
Hmm.
And that's kind of how life is.
Yeah.
You know,
And
we have
sometimes those dragonflies come back like a freaking hawk and
right.
smack you with their wings and go, hey, I sent two
Yeah.
bolts in a helicopter. Come on.
Well, in my classes, I teach that we have 10,000 thoughts a day. And of the 10,000 thoughts we have, only 10 of them are life changing thoughts. And the rest of them are unconscious and automatic and autopilot and negative thinking. And so you have to consciously stop. Like I have been saying for years, don't believe everything you think.
Hmm.
Just don't.
Yeah.
Never mind believing what other people think. Don't believe everything you think, because what you're thinking from is from the filters that you were raised from, the filters and the stories that have been implanted and projected onto you. And when you are a walking projection, then you're not being yourself. And so I'm all about authenticity and finding that authenticity within yourself, which is
Nice.
a lot about what I'm going to talk about today.
Awesome. Well, obviously, law of attraction files in here somehow, right? And we want to try to discipline our minds to be visualizing the things that we want as opposed to the things that either want to avoid or, trying to not recreate again, type thing. But how does it actually like line
How
up
many
with
how many
this?
times do you want to repeat, 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 repeat? That's what the law of attraction works that way. You do this and that happens, you do this and that happens, you do this and that happens. Well, why does that happen that way? Well, that's a great question. The law of attraction matches your frequencies of thoughts and actions. And your thoughts and actions are taught to you and they become ingrained. And then they become a lifestyle. Ugh. And then your awareness is, when your awareness is that what you're doing is not working anymore, then it's time to change the channel.
Yeah.
Change your lifestyle. You see it with diets all the time. I'm gluten free now. I'm dairy free. Like you see when you see when you see that what you're doing is not working, you have to do something different. You just have to. It's the way it works. And so just like changing the color of a wall of a room, only it's an internal process, not an external one. And the idea is to perpetuate the alignment that brings you joy. And since we are motivated by, pain or pleasure, I encourage people to make the change before the pain arrives.
Nice. Yes.
And that's not normally the case, and people want to know why things aren't working out in their life, you know. And the majority of my clients are asking for that. I can nail it down to 2 conversations almost with everybody, and I talk to hundreds of people a week, sometimes even,
Hmm.
and it's ease or clarity. I need the ease in my body, ease in my finances, ease in my relationships. Or I'd like the clarity, I'm lost. I don't know where to turn. I feel lost.
Yeah.
Or I just can't see anything. And so people will say, I have a relationship problem. I have a money problem. I have a career problem. I have a health problem. The bottom line is we are seeking ease or clarity. And usually they don't realize that they're consciously and unconsciously creating the beliefs from their situation through their mind. You just don't. And that's where I come in as a facilitator. I just see it. I've been doing this for so long now, and I've gone through so much unraveling in my own life that I just see it.
Hmm.
It's just I can't not see it.
Right, right, right. I totally get that. I do. It's like I see these patterns with people, and I went through a phase myself. Maybe you've experienced this as well, where you're just like so enamored with, oh my gosh, I can see this is what you're doing, and this is what the result's going to be if you don't shift doing something else. And not everybody is ready for that, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Like they haven't gotten to that pain point yet where they have to. You know, you're just talking a second ago where if something's not working, you just have to change, right?
Right.
But there's that period of time in between this isn't working and when it's really painful enough that we do take the risk.
Right. There's a
Change.
quote. There's a
You
quote that
know?
I'll chew up terribly,
Uh-huh.
but it's that Anita something that when it's life is too when you're tight in the bud and it becomes too painful that you have to blossom.
Yeah.
That is really where things began changing for me because life became too painful and I had to change. I had to.
Yeah.
And so I did what it took. And I always had this belief that I can outcreate my future. And it's like a life hack. And, whatever it was, I had it on speed dial.
Nice. I like
Whatever that thing is.
Awesome. Well, we're getting close to the end of our time, so I wanted to make sure that we tell everybody about
Right.
the 30-minute miracle making session that you're offering to everyone who is watching this, whether it's on the replay or live. And what exactly will they get out of it if they email you at shakti.miracles@yahoo.com and put spotlight in the subject?
Well, I call it my miracle making session, and it's basically bringing a moment of congruent alignment, whatever it is you're asking for in that moment, I'll be able to give a direction. And sometimes it is a miracle because I can see clearly what they can receive. And if you can't receive it, then I send you in a different pathway. But sometimes it's a moment where I can clear whatever it is, and then you have the insight in that moment. But it is a gift. It's a free session with me. It's usually 30 minutes long, and
Excellent.
so it's for new people only, not for people that I've been working with.
Gotcha. And again, just so everybody's got the information, please email shakti.miracles@yahoo.com and put spotlight in the subject line to receive your 30-minute miracle making session. I absolutely love that. We've been doing a 6-week beta and we've just finished it up, and that was called Making Miracles. And we were using an energetic technique to clear attachments to past stuff, the emotional attachment to the memory. And in that class, one of the things that I say often is how I define a miracle is a shift in perception that allows a new possibility that once occurred impossible to now be real as a possibility.
Right, and how I define it is healing a broken finger overnight.
There you go. That works too. Absolutely.
I mean, and I've worked with other healers that I received, and like things would just like shift like overnight. I could see that. And so when I started understanding that it's energy and we're playing with energy, then as a FMM, like I play with the energies, and then it opens up space. Like I used to do prayers for people. Like if someone needed a job, I would do a prayer for them, and they're like, "Oh my God, you're not going to believe it! I got a job today," and I'm like, really? And so that started happening where I would do a prayer for someone and then that thing would happen. And so that's where the FMM was born somewhat years and years ago. Nice. By realizing that I had a gift for helping people. And it comes back to the 777, which is the jackpot workshop that I started doing on my program. And that's a whole writing intensive where you do a daily writing. You use this tool that I have for a daily writing prompt for a month, and you get to the jackpot at the end.
Nice. I love it.
So that's where the 777 jackpot workshop comes from.
Well, then definitely when you email Shakti to ask about the 30-minute FMM, make sure that you ask about the jackpot workshop too, because that sounds really interesting.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
It's like people want things like yesterday. There are some people that know they've done enough work and they just can't figure out how to catapult. And so this is that. This is like there are some people that need the integration of my baby steps program over a year, but this is a 1-month intensive where it's like squeezing out whatever it is that needed to come out so that you can pinpoint that which has been hurting you and not helping you.
Awesome stuff. Thank you so much for joining me today, Shakti. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and I bless you in everything that you're up to, because it sounds like you are one powerful woman making a huge difference in this world. So thank you for what you do.
You're welcome.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me on here.
My pleasure. All right, everybody, have a fantastic week ahead, and we will talk to you all again real soon. Bye. When you open yourself up to actual energy work, makes that recovery progress so much faster. That recovery is possible. You do not have to live as a victim until your last days. You have unbelievable strength, and I know that because you're still here. Do you want to create something completely unrecognizable?